Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, Dr. Rajesh Gokhale, who also happens to be a biotechnologist of distinction in his own right. We have MD Biorec, Dr. Jitendra Kumar, Dr. Anamika, and of course the newly appointed Principal Director General of PIB. The distinguished audience, which is I think on one of the rare occasions we have such a huge galaxy under a single roof. We have some distinguished personalities from the industry. We have some eminent startups, successful startups. Of course, we have the members of the faculty. At the outset, I must compliment Rajesh and Jitendra for having organized and planned this event, the Global Biotech 4th edition, for whose curtain raiser all of us have gathered this morning. And even though the conference is being organized primarily jointly by the DBT and the BIRAC, I think its success would hugely depend on the participation of all of you who are over here. This is in fact one of the best examples of the whole of government functioning with the whole of society and the whole of industry. And that's precisely what is the priority area followed by the government led by Prime Minister Modi. While in the course of listening to all of the distinguished persons who came here before me, what I would gather is that primarily the purpose of this conference is twofold. A, to highlight India's biotechnology sector in the global spotlight, and B, to bring all the stakeholders together, domestic as well as the international, under a single roof, which is as important as the first objective. And I was glancing through the papers that Rajesh gave me about the last conference. They had 5,000 delegates, 500 exhibitors, and participation by more than 25 countries. And he was telling me that he is confident that they are going to cross that benchmark of the last conference. So I think they need to be applauded even before the conference happens. As a representative of the Modi government, I have no hesitation to say that ever since this government took over in 2014, there has been a paradigm shift in the priorities which the government follows. And there's been a special focus on science, technology, innovation, startups. And even though the BIRAC had been constituted just about 1 or 2 years earlier, before this government came, but actually it became functional only after 2014. And since as students of science we have been taught not to speak without evidence, so don't take it as a political observation, because I'm primarily from the fraternity. So I think to testimonize that, I would just relate to you a couple of figures. In 2015, Prime Minister in his Independence Day address from the ramparts of Red Fort talks about Startup India, Startup India. That's how the whole story starts. The very next year we have a policy in place. And from just about 350 startups in the year 2014, today we have more than 1.5 lakh, many of them unicorns. And we have risen to rank number 3 in the world ecosystem. So as I said, we are talking out of evidence. No, so please don't take it merely as a ministerial talk. Then soon after that, in 2023, the G20, which we had last year, it was the initiative of Prime Minister Modi. We had something called a global biopharma gathering of countries, nations from G20, which included primarily the USA and Brazil. So there you can see the kind of prioritization, the importance given. The very fact that the Prime Minister speaks about it from a global platform or speaks from the ramparts of Red Fort is itself the branding of the prioritization. Then in 2024 budget, which is a very recent one, you would recall that even before going for elections, it's not that easy for a political government to do so, because we have just vote of account. It's not a full-fledged budget, and vote of account for any political government is more to cater to the voter constituency rather than other areas. But here we had in the vote of account and Rajesh would bear me out, a mention of the biofoundries. And if those of you who have tasted both the worlds, this side and that side, would realize no government going for an election would make priority out of biofoundries. But here was a government who had the courage of conviction to mention biofoundries in its interim budget just before the election. And then, of course, there's been a constant upscaling of the biomanufacturing infrastructure. In 2022, we were the first ministry or the first department in the government of India where, at my suggestion, and I'm glad Rajesh conceded to that, we had 14 biotechnology institutions across the country which were brought under a single umbrella. And that was named BRIC, the Biotechnology Research Innovation Council. And this year precisely, which I think would gladden some of our friends from the industry as well, just before the code of conduct was announced, we had the opportunity of bringing in a legislation for the National Research Foundation, which you have named Anusandhan. And I'm glad in the very first session that was organized in the new building, I had the opportunity to move that bill and get it passed. And very soon we'll have that in place. And that would address many of the suggestions which have been made by the representatives from the industry and also those who have spoken here on behalf of the interface between the industry and the private sector and the government sector. Because there we are going to have, I think we have studied all the models across the world, including the National Research Society of America, etc., the one that Germany has. We have tried to improve upon that and also include the Indian context. And just as someone was saying that they have, I think, possibly the ma'am spoke about the communication angle being included in that. We have actually in our executive body also sought to give representation to humanities, to civil society, to social sciences. We're not confined only to the scientists or even the affiliated areas, because we have a rich repository of traditional knowledge as well, and we are going to make use of that. This is quite exclusive to India. And it is this government, and I'm glad the sister organization under this ministry called CSIR, just about 2 years back, we set up something called TKDL, which is one of the traditional knowledge digital library. I'm saying TKDL because that's how it is absorbed easily these days. The acronyms go faster than the actual name. But that's the so we are now trying to combine all those assets that we have, the knowledge assets, and also keep in mind, bearing in mind the Indian context. So National Research Foundation that we have I think, would be a very wide spectrum, which would also cover many of the aspects that were spoken over here. And the results of this in the last 10 years have been amazing. Again, if you go by evidence, as was being mentioned by Rajesh, in 2014 we were just $10 worth of economy, 10 billion. In 21 we were 8 times over 18, 24 we are 137 billion, and the projection now for 2030 is 300 billion. Jitendra was telling you about the startups, which is, we were just about 50 in 2014. Now he's saying it's up to almost 8,000. I mean, it's remarkable. I think the pace that has been, because the Department of Biotechnology actually in the government sector, as he's rightly mentioned, started somewhere in late 80s. But the awareness about it was lacking. And for many years, if you asked a commoner or even the students at the class 12 or the college level what was biotechnology, they would wonder whether it's biology or technology, engineering or medicine. It's now that they've come to understand. And we are today being ranked number 12 as biomanufacturers and number 3 in the Asia Pacific. And of course, as Rajesh has stolen one of my favorite expressions about COVID. So that's right. I was telling him, COVID got the better of everybody, but the biotechnologists got the better of COVID. So as somebody once suggested to Churchill, he should avoid cigar and his wine. So he said, I've got more out of this than these two elements have got out of me. So I think that applies as much to our friends in biotechnology. They were the greatest beneficiaries. They had the opportunity of mission COVID Suraksha being set up. And on a serious note, that gave them the opportunity to show to the entire world the amount of talent, acumen, and potential that was lying dormant. It was just waiting to happen. Waiting to happen with the slightest push from the level of the policymakers, from the level of the political dispensation. And I have no words to thank Prime Minister Modi that it was his personal initiative that it could be possible. We came out with the first ever DNA vaccine and also gifted it to the rest of the world, which gave us a worldwide recognition that we got to be known as leaders in biotechnology and bio manufacturing. Of course, later on we also come out with the papillovirus vaccine and many other things. I mean, that's a separate story for a separate session. But nevertheless, it was in fact those 3 years of COVID which gave us a new stepping stone and happened to be milestone. For any success story, there are two primary elements that are considered to be prerequisite. A, consistency. B, landmarks. That applies as much to science as to literature as to cinema. To have a lifetime achievement award, you have to be consistent, and then you have to keep propping up every now and then. And I think that came to us in those 3 years of COVID. And as he was mentioning, we are now into an era where we have biomanufacturing, agri-food, climate, energy, health. And I'm sure very soon many of us will be taking animal-less milk more than the animal milk, and having animal-less mutton or a chicken-less chicken tikka. And this is going to happen. And this is going to happen, and this is all going to be the magic of the biotechnology and biomanufacturing. And therefore, not taking long, because the chief guest is supposed to light the lamp and then push off after saying goody goodies. But I sometimes feel I have not got out of the habit of being a resource person as I was before I came into the government. So I think to sum up, I would say, and that will be a take-home message even for the media, that the next industrial revolution in the world is going to be bioeconomy driven. And just as 90s gave the world a new paradigm through IT, this is now going to be bioeconomy. And that future economy is going to comprise a huge component of what we have started mentioning as circular economy. So there will be no wastage. And and that will change our lifestyles, change our behaviors. The vegetarians will turn non-vegetarians in a single sentence. So that will be the change. And that is going to give India an edge over the rest of the world. Because we have huge bioresources which have remained unexplored over the last 70 years. Only after this government came, we started looking at the Himalayas. The same ministry has the success story of Aroma mission to tell you, through lavender startups. The other Ministry of Earth Sciences has the story of marine economy, blue economy, which is again related to biodiversity. So all these resources are exclusive to India, the Indian subcontinent. Therefore, that is going to give us an edge over this. And to achieve that, I think it won't be possible without having a closer collaboration between the private and public sector. I've been saying this, I've been a vociferous votary of aligning with private sector even when there was a huge amount of skepticism on both the sides. But I think if we have to now live up to the global benchmarks, we'll have to, so we need to have a PP model, we have to have international collaborations, interministerial collaboration, and also develop new generation of human resources. And for that, we would require, I'm sure the two gentlemen, Rajesh and Jitendra, would agree with me that they would also require the equal participation of these gentle ladies and gentlemen sitting in front of me. And therefore, to that extent, I'm sure Global Bio India 2024 conference is going to be held, will provide the world bio-vision for the future. And that bio-vision will essentially be India inspired. And the same bio-vision will also lay the foundation of what Prime Minister keeps reiterating, Viksit Bharat 2047. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.